What's up, party people? You've got your boy Survivor Teek here. I'm here in Oregon. I'm in a small town called Corbett near Portland. It's about half an hour east of Portland. I found myself lost. Actually, I'm lost. I'm lost in this trail. I was trying to see some waterfalls near the Vista House here in Oregon. I took this one path, and I think I took a wrong turn, and so I tried to Google map it. And so I think I'm on my way for a 2-hour hike, which I do not want to do because that ruins my morning. So I think I'm going to circle back over here and maybe we'll get a waterfall view on the way over. But you're not here to listen to my travel stories. If I fall down hiking over here, you'll see it and it'll be beautiful. But let's talk about Survivor. Big episode, 10 people down to 8 people. A lot was happening. So let's first chat about some of the fallout from the previous tribal council. You had Deshawn upset with Shan. And so this is the big rift in the alliance. They're clearly the two power players who are dictating the shots. We're not seeing much from the other majority members. And then you also have the secondary fracture between Heather and Nasir. And so Xander and Evie accurately were like, chaos is good for us. Like, let's check out, let's see what's happening. But we continue to see some boneheaded moves by the majority alliance. We saw Shan and Liana, Danny and Deshawn, Ricard as their fifth, very overtly make themselves known as a majority alliance in front of Erica and Xander. Xander was talking to Erica, we need to make something happen. Xander pretty much accurately summed it up by saying that the minority is too fractured and the majority probably knows that. The minority, especially with the Heather and Nasir drama, which Deshawn probably stoked the flames of, they can't get together. You needed Nasir to come with Heather. You need Erica and Xander to trust each other. You need Evie and Xander to trust each other. There's so much mistrust in that minority side of things. But there's a twist. And the twist was pretty interesting. We've seen this a couple of times before in Island of the Idols. I think in Ghost Island as well. Where they split the teams into two different tribes, temporary tribes. They each have an immunity winner and voted council. And probably the most interesting winner on each, probably the two biggest targets on the tribe right now, Erica for her strategic chops, which we haven't seen, and Xander. And so those two were able to win immunity. And they were safe from tribal council. And they could have used their power a little bit more effectively, but they chose not to. Who knows why. And so we ended up with two very interesting tribe dynamics. You had one, which was 3 old Luvu and the two old Ua, Shan and Ricard, with Nasir, Heather, and Erica. On the other side, you had 2 minority Luvu with 3 old Yasa, the only remaining Yasa members. And so that was Xander, Liana, Evie, with Danny and Deshawn. So the obvious thing is if these tribes stuck together, there's the minority people. One of Shan and Ricard should have gone, and then one of Danny and Deshawn should have gone. Straightforward. And imagine if they actually did that and got rid of Shan and Deshawn and get rid of the 2 biggest power players in the game. Everybody else would be sitting in a much better position, probably other than Liana and Danny and Ricard. But I don't understand how the players didn't see that. I know there's a lot of advantages in play, but that was the simplest move. So let's talk about the tribe where Nasir got voted off first. Nasir was overconfident. There's not much more to say about that. If you read his post-exit interviews, he was quite overconfident. He apparently, when he came to the merged tribe, he did want to work with the old Luvu, but him and Shan apparently bonded over religion because they're both really religious, which I didn't show on the show, but I found that really fascinating to really hear that Shan was the one who pulled Nasir in. And you saw Shan consistently try to protect Nasir again and again and again. And it seemed like Nasir was kind of Shan's alternate option if the blue tribe, or not the blue tribe, the main alliance of Liana, Shan, Danny, and Deshawn did blow up. So it seemed like there was a real bond there. Nasir, with that Heather drama, I think actually created a rift. And Nasir basically straight up told Erica, hey, I'm voting you out, which was insanity because Heather could have played the shot in the dark, making herself immune. Who knows? Heather could talk to Shan and Shan could play the idol on her, if that connection existed. Nasir was just playing really overconfident. He didn't play his idol, which would have saved him, and Heather would have gone. This was the time to play the idol if you're in Nasir's spot when you don't really have any solid alliance or any solid pair. And there's 2 pairs. All the pairs had to do, being Eric and Heather and Ricard and Shan, is chat with each other and vote out. And that's kind of what Ricard did. That's kind of, in fact, what happened. There's this additional vote that Shan used. There's a lot of debate online about whether it was needed or not. I still don't think it's needed. But there's this hypothetical situation where Erica and Heather actually voted for Shan or Ricard instead, but that didn't happen. It was a very remote situation. I think it would have been better to save the advantage. But extra votes are so situational anyway, so you may as well burn it. So Shan burned the extra vote, did a purposeful draw between between Heather and Nasir. Heather acted well. Heather was able to flush out the idol and burn that double vote, the extra vote. And so, unfortunately, Nasir left the game. I don't know what's really left for Heather and Erica now. They're clearly at the bottom of the power structure, but they seem to make some inroads with Ricard. I really think Ricard's strategic chops came out really strong this episode. He showed that he had a good pulse of the game. Within the major alliance of 4, he's clearly the 5th, but he was kind of in a power structure struggle with Nasir to be the 5th as well, because Nasir had closer bonds with Danny and Deshawn, whereas Ricard seemed to have closer bonds with Liana and Shan. And so this way he's able to swing the power back over to him. And so in a final 5 situation, Ricard can probably bond with Shan and Liana to get rid of Danny and Deshawn. And so that's probably what Ricard was thinking. He was able to successfully convince Shan, which was huge, and the correct vote happened. And I think Ricard is really in the power position in this game, especially if he's able to create more bonds with Erica and Heather. That could be really good for his game moving forwards. The other tribe was a little bit more entertaining, I think, because there was a little bit more drama between whether Deshawn was going to stick with Xander and Evie or Deshawn was going to flip and load out Liana. It was tough for Deshawn because the blowout would have been huge and he would have really had to bond with a minority alliance, and who knows if Erica and Heather would have joined him. He seems to be somewhat aligned with them, so that's likely possible, and so he could have had this very loose alliance of 5 and then bring in Danny, and then he would have to target Shan and Ricard right away, and I don't know if he was willing to do that. And so the other option was to stick with the plan, very straightforward plan, and get Evie out. The other complexity in this was Xander's advantages. So reading from Evie's interviews, I think the show really showed that Evie and Xander were at the bottom, but they didn't really trust each other. And this goes back to original Yasa. Evie lied to Xander in the vote she vote out. I think as well as the Abraham vote out. So the alliance was never too strong to begin with. There was that whole flub that Evie did where she told Deshawn about the idol, which I think I chirped earlier on in my earlier podcast about that. So Xander chose to keep both his idol and the extra vote. It's a lot of dialogue where he should have used the extra vote, forced a tie, gone to rocks, because then Evie would have been safe because she was the tie target, and then Xander would have been safe as the immunity holder. But at the same time, I'm kind of more on team Xander. Xander seems to have a little bit of an alliance with Danny. He's kept 2 advantages going into Final 8, and he's a big immunity threat. So he can likely try to win an immunity, use an extra vote, use an idol to survive some more tribals. He's really in the underdog spot. And he knows that there's fractures that exists. So we'll see if Xander can kind of still slide by and make more of an impact. But Evie's game, Evie played too strategically. She didn't really make bonds when she needed to make bonds. Her key bond was the Deshawn bond that she really had to build. But I think the more key bond was Liana. The fact that Liana flipped and Liana wasn't even going to consider working with Xander and Evie, especially when Xander was like, hey, I have this idol. And Liana was like, oh, you should use that. Give me that idol to hold on to, trying to take something out of Shan's playbook. Who knows where Liana's game is at? I think she's going to be a final loser. She's made no strategic moves. All of her moves have been flubs. I feel like everyone's just trying to bring Heather and Liana to the finals for an easy victory. So whichever player is able to do that will win the $1 million. So I think Liana's pretty safe. She should have flipped back, but at the end of the day, Liana's game is so burnt. It might make more sense to stick with the majority alliance. I hope she can bring Danny and Heather to the end with her and try to pull out a victory against those two, because the heck is Danny doing either? So strategically, this has become an interesting season, because I think Nasir had the ability to be strategic with the advantages and his allegiances, but he just didn't have that mindset for the game. Tiffany, Evie, and Sydney, I really had high hopes on, and they got basically voted out back-to-back episodes. And so I think Xander and Ricard are kind of the 2 people leading the fray here. Deshawn as well. Those are the players to look to make strategic moves. And you have Shan, who's there to make any move that she can make. So I think there's still some more gameplay to be had. I want to see if Eric and Heather can get out of their situation and build some bonds. Hopefully they can work with Xander. Maybe they can bring over Deshawn and Danny, or Ricard and Shan. That's kind of where it is. It's whether that big alliance fractures or not. If it doesn't fracture, then we might see a final 5 with that alliance, which I hope not, because I always like the minorities and the underdogs getting through. So that's Survivor Teek. I'll talk more about the contender analysis in part 2, and hope you're having a good one. Thanks. Bye.